Hey, welcome back. It's Jason Walter here. I noticed that Redfin posted their latest housing market update yesterday. In this report, they're stated that houses are taking longer to sell, housing inventory is up, and also home prices have been decreasing ever since the start of this month, which of course is July. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into the video here. I'm going to be sharing this latest report with you guys. Hope you guys get a lot of value of today's video. It says here buyers can now take their time touring houses for sale and considering houses before making an offer. Still, this selection remains very limited despite supply being up, as few homes are being listed for sale and even fewer are selling. And what they mean here is that we have more houses listed for sale, but we're not seeing a giant increase of new listings hitting the market. But because home buying demand has been decreasing, houses are taking longer to sell. So the average days on the market for the 4 weeks ending July 17th was 19 days. This is actually 1 day longer than last year. Of course, that's not a lot compared to 1 year ago, but this is the first time in 2 years that the median days on the market posted a year-over-year gain. Now, this is pretty remarkable because over the past 2 years, days on the market has been decreasing compared to the previous year. Therefore, this is the first time in 2 years where days on the market has increased compared to 1 year ago. Meanwhile, pending home sales have fallen to the lowest levels we've seen since May 2020, which is obviously during the early parts of this pandemic here. And the total number of houses for sale have now posted its biggest increase since August 2019. And speaking of houses for sale, housing inventory has now increased about 50 to 60% since February of this year. According to the chief economist at Redfin, who's Daryl Fairweather, she had this to say. Buyers who earlier this year had a race to beat the competition can now take their time touring houses and perhaps even wait to see if sellers drop their asking price. I believe this is kind of like a blanket statement though, because as I always mention, every housing market's different, right? So in housing markets where we see a giant increase of active listings or a giant increase in the number of houses for sale, and also a large percentage of price drops, obviously buyers can take their time and take a look at houses listed for sale and not be in a big rush. However, in other housing markets where supply may have not increased greatly, this may not bode true. But my advice for you guys, if you guys are looking to buy a house right now, make sure you have long-term time horizons. I always say have at least 7 to 10 plus years for your time horizons of when you plan to sell the house. That'd be my advice to you guys. Also, I don't really necessarily agree with this regarding perhaps you can see if the seller drops their asking price. If you guys see a house you guys like, then I would really focus on taking a look at this house before the seller drops their asking price. So if your days on the market is averaging about 30 days on average, and you see a house that's been listed for sale for 60 days, and they have not reduced their asking price yet, that may be a good opportunity to place an offer on that house because it happens all the time when my home buyers want to wait until the seller drops their asking price. The seller actually does drop their asking price and suddenly the seller gets multiple offers. So I would advise you guys to place offers before they drop their asking price. And obviously in that scenario where the house is sitting in the market for a long period of time, then offer less than our asking price. And Daryl Fairweather went on to say the following here. Still, few houses are being listed for sale, so if your dream home hits the market, you should negotiate. The value of your house may fall in the near term, but if you plan to live there for 5 or 10 years, you will almost certainly gain home equity over the horizon. I don't necessarily agree with her regarding this because a 5-year time horizon is, in my opinion, a short-term time horizon. So I'd be more focused on, if you're gonna be buying a house, not to sell it for 7 to 10 plus years, not 5 to 10. On the other hand, home sellers may want to list their houses sooner rather than later before prices fall more. Okay, changing gears slightly, let's talk about some leading indicators of home buying activity right now. So for the week ending July 21st, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage, according to Freddie Mac, is 5.54%. This is actually down from the 2022 high of 5.81%, but up from 3.11% at the start of this year. Also, no big changes here. Fewer people are searching for houses for sale on Google. And also the Redfin Home Buying Demand Index, which is of course a measure of home tours and other home buying services from Redfin agents, is actually down 17% year over year during the week ending July 17th. And here's a graphic depiction showing their home buying demand index over the past few years. So the red line here is for 2022, blue is 2021, and this is in 2020. But ever since the end of April and the beginning of May, Redfin has received fewer requests of home tours from their agents here. And the levels they have right now is actually down 17% from 2021, but also below 2020 levels as well. And again, coincidentally, mortgage rates surpassed 5% for the first time since approximately 2018 in the beginning of April. And this is right when demand started to decrease compared to the previous year. And speaking of home tours by real estate agents in North America, by the way, here's the latest trends over the past few years. So the top line here is for 2020, the middle line here is for 2021, and the orange line right here is for 2022. And by the way, these are the percent changes in home tours compared to the first week of each year. So here's the latest trends we have right now. This is for the week ending July 21st. So in 2022, at this time, there was a 47.9% increase in the number of home tours in North America compared to the first week of 2020. Pretty crazy. In 2021, there was an increase of 20.3% compared to the first week of 2021, but now it has decreased by 2.8% compared to the start of this year. So this is a very telling story because back in 2020, obviously our housing market was on fire, and same with 2021 as well. So when you compare over the past few years compared to now, it's pretty remarkable because in 2022, we basically had less home tours in North America compared to January 1st of this year, really ever since the middle of June. This is pretty telling because basically in the middle of summer right now, ever since the middle of June, we've had less home tours compared to January, which tends to be the slowest part of the year. So we're seeing fewer people searching for houses for sale. We're seeing their Redfin demand index decrease, which is a measure of requests of home tours. We're seeing home tours in general going down across North America. And also mortgage purchase applications were down 19% from 1 year ago. And this is actually the lowest level since April 2020. But of course, I did some digging for you guys as I report to you guys in my previous video here. But if you exclude April 2020, which is basically when we had COVID lockdowns, this is the lowest level since November of 2016. What this means is that the number of people submitting loan applications to buy houses right now is almost at a 6-year low. Okay, changing gears slightly, let's talk about home prices in the US right now. And this data here covers the 4-week period ending July 17th. The median sold price was up 11% year over year to $389,000. But this 11% year over year growth rate in home prices is actually down from the peak that we saw back in March when home prices increased about 16% year over year. So what this means is that home prices have increased about 11% from 1 year ago, but this is down from the peak of 16% that we saw back in March. And again, stay tuned here because home prices have decreased over the past few weeks here, and I'll be sharing the trends here in just a little bit. So home prices have been increasing on a year-over-year basis, but on a month-to-month basis, they have been decreasing ever since the start of this month. Meanwhile, the median asking price of a newly listed house increased 14% year-over-year, but this is actually down 2.8% from the all-time high that was set during the 4 weeks ending May 22nd. So here's a graphic showing the median sold price in the US right now. Again, it's a lagging indicator of our housing market right now. Again, up 10.6% compared to 1 year ago. But over the past several weeks, home prices have been decreasing. Obviously, this is a very short-term trend, and I'll definitely keep you posted to see if this is going to be a long-term one. We're also seeing a similar trend regarding asking prices for houses right now because the asking prices for houses has basically been on a downward trend ever since June of this year. Also, what we're seeing right now is that home buyers' mortgage payments are going up as well because of rising mortgage rates and of course due to rising home prices this year. So the monthly mortgage payment on the median asking price home hit $2,389 per month at the current 5.54% mortgage rate. That's up 45% from $1,650 from 1 year ago when mortgage rates were 2.78%. Therefore, over the past 1 year, basically to buy the same house 1 year ago compared to now, that's going to cost the average home buyer about $740 more per month in their housing payment. Okay, let's talk about housing inventory and also pending home sales. So active listings, which of course is housing inventory, actually rose 3% year over year, the largest increase since August 2019. In my personal opinion, this is not the big news headline we should be focusing on because active listings have increased about 50 to 60% ever since February of this year. So a big increase so far this year. Despite that, pending home sales, in other words, signed contracts, are actually down 15% year over year, the largest decline since May 2020. So even though we have approximately 50 to 60% more houses listed for sale right now compared to February, pending home sales are down 15% from a year ago. And this increase of housing supply is not really coming from a giant increase of new listings. So have a look at this, because new listings is actually down 3% from 1 year ago. What this means, of course, is that the increase of active listings is from a pullback in home buying demand, as it's taking longer for houses to sell. And of course, we're seeing fewer houses get under contract from a year ago. And here's a graphic depiction showing pending home sales over the past few years. So ever since basically April, we've had less pending home sales compared to the previous year, which is 2021. Also, the levels of pending home sales we have right now is the same compared to 2020 at this time. And like I mentioned, we're not seeing this giant increase of new listings right now, at least on average across the United States right now. So the number of new listings is actually down 3.3% compared to the same time period in 2021. Meanwhile, active listings, which of course is housing supply, is actually up 2.7% from 2021. So we have more houses listed for sale right now compared to the same time period in 2021. But despite this big increase of housing supply, basically ever since February of this year, we've had less pending home sales from the year ago. Also, approximately 41% of pending home sales went under contract within 2 weeks of hitting the market. This is actually on par with 2020, but below 2021's levels. Also, only 28% of pending home sales went under contract within 1 week, actually below 2021's levels, as well as 2020 as well. So in other words, approximately 28% of home sellers accepted an offer within 1 week of hitting the market. But in stark contrast though, approximately 70% took longer than 1 week to sell. Additionally, days on the market is at 19 days right now, 1 day slower compared to 1 year ago, and also about 4 days slower compared to the all-time record lows that we saw back in May and June of this year. And yet another trend line we're seeing right now that is below 2021's levels is the percent of houses that sold above their list price. So for the most recent data we have right now, that share is at 49%. So in other words, 49% of houses sold above their list price. But in stark contrast though, 51% either sold at the list price or below it. Also, the share of price drops has continued to skyrocket across the United States right now, because approximately 7.3% of listings have had price reductions over the past week here. And this is far higher than 2021 and also 2020, because back then the share was approximately 3%. Therefore, the current levels of price drops right now is basically 2 times the levels we saw over the past couple of years. And by the way, this is an all-time record high according to Redfin here for data that goes back all the way to 2015. The previous all-time record high was actually set in October at 5.2%. Now we're at 7.3%. And on a side note, in case you guys realize here, the share price drops at 7.3% is a lot less than other sources are telling us. So according to altosresearch.com, the share price reductions right now is 33%. So I'm not too sure if we should be multiplying this by 4, for example, because these are weekly price drops. I don't know if that really makes sense, but I actually emailed Redfin about this and I'm waiting to hear back. Another downward trend we're seeing right now is the percent of houses selling above their asking price, or the sale to list price ratio, I should say. That ratio is 101.4%. And these are based on sold houses though, so this is a lagging indicator. So this basically means that on average for the 4 weeks period here, that home sellers sold their houses for 1.4% over their asking price. This is obviously a lot lower than the all-time record highs we saw this year at over 102.5%. And obviously it's much lower right now compared to the peak in 2021 as well. So comment below with your biggest takeaways from today's video. If you guys got any value out of today's video, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that. Hope you guys have an awesome day and look forward to seeing you in the next video.